This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Hing.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio. Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. Joan and Janet are subtle energy empaths who navigate consciousness. Their passion is to support you in your evolution. As consciousness, we are all one. One mind, one heart, free of all limitations. Experience this reality with us and discover how it can make a difference in your daily living. Join us in a state of grace as we explore, with warmth and humor, this thing we call life. Now, here are Joan Newcomb and Janet Barrett.
Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. We're your co-hosts, Joan Newcomb, coming to you from Tacoma, Washington, and Janet Barrett is coming to you from Portland, Oregon.
Hello, everyone. How nice to be with you again.
We have a fantastic show for you today. We are talking about consciousness and dealing with the unexpected. There are so many wild and wacky things happening in the world today. How do we deal with the unexpected in our daily lives? So stay tuned, because we're going to talk about what's really going on from the greater perspective of consciousness.
And meanwhile, here's an invitation for you to go deeper with us, to connect with us beyond the show. And our show website is www.consciousconversationswithjoanandjanet.com. And there you're going to find out all the information where we list all our podcasts from our shows and information about both the blogs that Joan and I write. She does hers on Friday. I do mine on Mondays. And about the meetings. We each offer meetings, Joan in the Puget Sound area and me in Portland, Oregon. And about our personal individual sessions. We have all that information. And then we got all that great Facebook stuff. Tell them, what do they get when they open that up, Joan?
I just always have this desire to quiz you on Facebook, but I'll be gentle with you now. So it's actually just a matter of logic. If you go to Facebook and put in our show's name, which is Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, you will find our group, join our group, and join the fun. If you're curious about Janet, her Facebook page is Janet Barrett, and my Facebook page is Joan Newcomb. And what else? We're on Twitter. Our Twitter handles are...
I'm Janet Beyond. I know
Thank
that.
you.
Right?
I knew that. And it's like, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet was too long for Twitter, and so we just made it at Joan and Janet. And because Conscious Conversations, I think, was too long as well. And then mine, I'm Joan Newcomb, all one word, at Joan Newcomb on Twitter. And you can also subscribe to us on YouTube, so go find this as Conscious Conversations at Joan and Janet on YouTube. And then I'm on YouTube. I do a weekly YouTube video, but you can find that. You're welcome to join me on YouTube, but you also can find it on our website, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, because I post that there every week.
And tell them about your Facebook project you've been doing. I think that's really nice. Your live conversation you're doing?
Oh, Facebook Live. It's not exactly. So what it is that I've been launching my program, and I've got, and the doors have closed now. I'll be opening the doors again for January. And I did not have time to do my Tuesday videos, which, require editing them and things like that. So I started doing Facebook Lives. So thanks for the reminder. I do Facebook Lives at 9:30 Pacific time on Tuesdays now, in lieu of doing my little nice edited YouTube videos. So it's a spontaneous thing. I talk a little bit longer than my YouTube videos, but you can get all sorts of words of wisdom from me live and in person, or find it again on my Facebook page afterwards, and I post it on our website as well.
Good stuff. So welcome to December, where all kinds of things are different. We're having unexpected things happen. That's what the holidays are all about, don't you think, Joan? You never know what you plan and what happens.
Yes, and there's, we can have all sorts of excuses like that, like, oh, it's the holidays, oh, it's Mercury retrograde,
Exactly.
Something else is happening at this time. And then if you just look in the news, we've had never-ending surprises, actually. So it's not only a holiday topic, it's a timeless topic, is how to deal with the unexpected. And I'll tell you, my sense is that things are going to get more and more unexpected. So, how do you deal with that?
It's important, right, how you deal with it, because everything is an opportunity in consciousness for a moment of awareness, and how to make sure that you can check in, and we have plans and we intend things. And then what happens after that, might be a little different. And so we're noticing that the cosmos and the energies seem to be providing a lot of potential and opportunities. And so for us, it's important to be in our authentic voice, in our heart-centered awareness, and just ride out the events that happen in your life and enjoy them for what they are. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, right?
Yeah, I'm actually going to say things completely differently. And hey, I've got 4 minutes before commercial break, so I'll start now. So
okay.
Here's my perspective, is that what is going on is that greater consciousness is coming into form. So the greater aspect of the essence of who we are is coming into physical form. And so the essence of who we are is this amazing, wide, expansive, high vibratory energy. And when it comes into something that is dense, that is more solid, it has kind of a seismic effect. And so we are all feeling it in different ways. And whatever we felt very attached to, we felt was very solid and real, is in the process of disintegrating. So we're seeing it show up in our lives as, unexpected things happening, incredible roller coaster ride of emotions, news events. You just pick a core issue and you're going to see it reflected in your life, but it's really there in the process of disintegrating because a greater, higher vibration is coming through. And that's, we haven't quite got into the details of how to experience it from a more expanded viewpoint. So we were kind of being diplomatic when we said how to deal with the unexpected, because it's like how to deal with things going to heck in a handbasket is really what it is. Or, we intend for to have greater health, and then we have worse health. If we intend to have greater prosperity, and then we have worse prosperity. It's almost like opposites. We're like in weird kind of mirror land, where the more you try to go towards something, whether it's a rainbow or an oasis kind of thing, it feels like it gets farther away.
Well, I think it's also, what do you do when what you want happens? Because people also hold that they can't have what they want on a lot of levels, right? And so something happens and it's good, and I've seen people talk themselves out of it or poo-poo it or put it down, and so it disappears again, right? And you go, oh, that's an interesting way that we've organized that. So how to deal with what we haven't planned on, or when things turn out the way there's just we were coming up with all this language yesterday when we were putting this together about how we experience stuff, really, and the things that you plan for and what happens as a result of that and what's running underneath that. And as consciousness, we want to just invite ourselves to our experiences and catch the ride, catch the wave of it, catch the flow of it, and just go, okay, where do I want to go with this? And it gives you more opportunities, I think, definitely.
Yeah, and you reminded me, either we had this conversation or I was talking to a client. I can't remember now. But it was, you were talking about how to have something. And what I find is that, a disaster apparently happens, but what it does is it actually leads you to what you really wanted than what you thought. Mm-hmm. So we all wanted a female president, but what we've got is a mass wave of more empowered women. Mm-hmm. So, instead of it being easy for us, it's propelled us to really personal empowerment in a bigger way. So we have to stop for a commercial break right now, but stay tuned because we are talking about consciousness and dealing with the unexpected when we come right back.
Is your soul calling you to do something more meaningful with your life? Do you feel crazy for wanting to quit your secure job? Perhaps you are waiting until you retire to do what you love. Maybe you are too daunted to follow your dream. If any of these match your life, then Joan Newcomb's Purpose and Passion Coaching Program is just for you. In just 12 weeks, you will discover who you essentially are and why you are here. Learn to live as your greater self and navigate with conscious mastery. Go to joan-newcomb.com. That's joan-newcomb.com for all of her coaching programs. Would you like a fresh approach to the challenges you are dealing with? Take a journey into your enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Janet is a subtle energies empath, accessing the field of potential with warmth, humor, and support. She will help you to hear what your inner voice is saying. She will share with you how to appreciate who you are now and offer you new ways to understand and transform your issues. Reach her at www.janetandbeyond.com. That's janetandbeyond.com. Again, janetandbeyond.com. Transformation is possible. You can enjoy new outcomes in your current experiences. They can happen in the blink of an eye.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. To reach our program, please send questions and comments to consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. That's consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet.
Welcome back. You're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan, and I'm along here with Janet. And we are talking about consciousness in dealing with the unexpected.
There's lots of unexpected, right? And we want to be practical about this, everybody. So what do we mean when something unexpected happens? It's something you didn't plan for, right? It's something that your sense of control is like, ooh, I didn't know about that. And allowing yourself to go there, because going there is where your answers are, I think. And being open to having new experiences, and that's helping you to hold awareness of yourself as an expansive thing. If we knew all the answers, most of the time we wouldn't do the things we knew that were coming along the way, you know. So it's a way to encourage ourselves to be a little looser, to notice where we're not loose, to notice where we're kind of stuck, and that's important to know those things.
Yeah, and what I feel like is with this greater consciousness in the world today, and all of us actually being greater consciousness in the world today, is that the way to navigate is to be improvisational. Mm-hmm. So, and we so want to have prescribed steps and systems, and we want a very precise, map and itinerary of how to go, and that's not what this world is. It's not a school with a curriculum and a schedule. It is a playground for us as consciousness. And yes, you can go to Disneyland and there's actually some ideal ways to navigate Disneyland. You get there at 8:30 in the morning, and you hit this ride, but there's also you hit any ride you want and have a completely different experience. So that's kind of what I see going on in the world, is that we get these unexpected things happening that seem to trip us up. And it is really our greater self just having a whale of a time. And it's like, okay, so what happens if we do this?
Yeah. Well, okay, I can appreciate the approach. For me, I think it's more, It is what it is till it isn't. It is, I register that in terms of left brain, right brain, consciousness and heart, and it is all about more right brain because it's more of a global perspective. And we also do have the left brain, and that's what brings into fruition those right brain and consciousness things, or concepts and ideas and pictures and stuff. So it's like how to navigate between the two of them for me is more about the balance in the relationship of realizing, oh, I'm kind of stuck. When you're stuck, that's your left brain. When you've hit your limits of how you have allowed something to be designed. And so in doing this work as consciousness, which is back to the overview, you bring that awareness that allows you to experience from that left brain. That expands that. That's what's expanding is that left brain. And because its job is to just make happen what that right brain puts into action.
Wait. You just said that's what is expanding is that left brain?
Yeah. It's expanding the limits because that's what's limited. Because consciousness is expansion. I mean, it is already, it's the big picture. So your definition of yourself and what things are and your control is that left brain that's just taking information from the right and making it actual.
Right. So
that's got to fit.
Right. So your right brain is the expansive side and your left brain is experiencing. So the way I would say it is see, and I see it outside the realm of the organ of the brain, but if you think of your brain as the computer part of your vehicle, you know, the left brain is the GPS part of it, and it's where the organizing and the keeping you on track. And that's where all the programming is from childhood on up and how to be socially acceptable. And we forget that the actual GPS for your brain is to take you as consciousness through this reality, not necessarily to have you stand up and be straight and be socially acceptable, but it is to help you to get in the direction you want to go as consciousness. So exactly, as greater consciousness comes in, it is like showing up the glitches with your GPS.
Right. And, if you talk about things like mindfulness, it's not so much brain orientation that we use right brain, left brain, because the right brain is also the axis, is consciousness, right? That's the human mechanism experience of consciousness. And so those work together. And then it's how we embody that. So in your sense of awareness is that that's what potential is. Potential is the expansiveness because nothing's limited. So nothing has become yet. And as you move into, more awareness, and then you can feel how you pull things together, how you create things. And any bias is a bias, and there's no need to judge it. You just look at what comes as a result of having that. So in practical terms, when we said dealing with the unexpected, it was like, okay, I have an intention. I'm going to do this. And that's as far as, okay, and sometimes I may think, I'm going to do this because then that takes me to that, and that takes me to that, and that takes me to what I really want. But the opportunity is that you do this whatever this is, and you're in a different direction. You're not in that way you thought you were going to get someplace. You're actually in a different opportunity. And you may find that as you follow that opportunity, it may lead you eventually to where you thought you wanted to go, but you're just going to hit other different points along the way. And so that's the unexpected. We had thought it would be this, and this, and it's really that, and there. And that's what's fun to me. So that makes life interesting. Something
I always found was that, I taught law of attraction manifestation techniques from like the early 80s. But what I always found is that I would be pointed in a direction, which is where I thought my stuff was going to come from. And it would manifest out of left field. I mean, sometimes literally you could almost see it coming to you out of left field. So it was never coming from the direction you expected it. You know, it came out of left field. And that's what it feels like reality in general feels like to me nowadays is greater consciousness, is that the opposite is true. And whatever kind of efforting you're trying to do to make stuff happen, it's coming in a different way, and it's coming from a completely different angle. And that's when I know that this is really, it's a game of consciousness, and it's not a game of nuts and bolts and, try hard and blood, sweat, and tears kind of build it kind of thing.
Well, it takes the stress, and it feels like stress, to events. And we're going to, as a human part, label that event and how we feel about it. And what this does is that opens that up. Okay, this feels like what I need to do and where I need to be right in this moment. And that's all I know. And those moments are precious. And a lot of us have that moment, and then we have to qualify it and quantify it. And we say, oh, okay, then this happens, and then this happens. And pretty soon we're not with what was possible. And you can use that good, bad, ugly, indifferent, however you want to frame it. And I think this is all about awareness. That's what's so prevalent right now. Look at all we're becoming aware of in ourselves and in our behavior, in how we relate to one another and how we relate to the planet and how we relate to the cosmos. There's just all these different potentially informative experiences that we're present to. And instead of being stuck in, oh, I didn't get what I wanted, and it had to be that way, and the bounty of someone bringing you the flower, and it reminds you of your humanity and the bliss that can be present in just looking at a child's face or a flower, that you maybe missed because you had to have that bicycle, you had to have that cell phone, and it's just different ways of anchoring consciousness and anchoring ourselves in that.
Yeah.
The unexpected. I like it.
Yeah. And so what I find is when I shift my perspective to navigating life as consciousness, then the unexpected isn't a disaster. The unexpected isn't a crisis. It's you respond with curiosity. You can respond with surprise or even amusement. Oh, look at me. I'm now bedridden, my clothes up, but I have so much more time to read my romance novels.
Romance novels. Really.
And, that sounds lovely. So, what did it take to have that kind of vacation? And what comes out of it is ultimately bigger than you can imagine. So that's the other thing that I'm noticing is that when I try to process anything through my left brain, or through my intentions or what my mind is interpreting, it's got limitations and struggle. But when I am open to it as consciousness, it's just unfolding in almost a magical way.
There's intention, there's expectation, and it's the alignment of the two. The challenge is the intention's there, the expectation happens, and sometimes that expectation is the challenge, and sometimes it's also the ringing endorsement, and it is what you wanted. And that was the only way you could get to it.
So I want to ask you, you said something earlier, I just wanted to catch you with what you just said because I'm curious about it. It's the alignment of expectation and intention?
Yeah, intention and expectation.
So
when those are aligned, then the things happen the way they can happen, because there's nothing running interference. Expectation is the fallback position. Oh, I'd love to have this. This is my intention. I want this. And this doesn't happen because what you just did is you came up against your expectation. And there it was. Oh, well, I'd love to have that. But you can't. That's the expectation is, but you can't. And, and so when those are aligned in the way that they're congruent to what you want and you creating what you want, then that's the alignment that you're looking for. Does that make sense?
It does. And language is an interesting thing because I would have the opposite with that, because I think about, actually what I find now is, yes, expectation is, this is how it should be, the expectation or the assumption of this is how it should be. But I'm also really careful with intentions, because the intention is, where you want to go. But what I find is our mind's intention of that, is an expectation in and of itself. So, when I work with people and, when we play games in the meetup groups and whatever, I caution them, I don't use that word either, but I suggest having open-ended intentions, because in that openness it brings you beyond what you expect. So, if I had intended, if I intended one thing, I would still be, stuck in a place where I actually didn't want to be, but I didn't know how to get to where I am. And now I am in a place that is more expansive than I could have imagined. I'll give you a couple examples about that. I was just thinking about that today, because we moved to Tacoma, which is kind of like, the ugly little cousin of Seattle.
Now that has so much judgment in it. Oh my gosh.
Yes, exactly. And I was thinking about, where did I get the judgment of Tacoma? That Seattle is better than Tacoma or something. And the thing I find about being in Tacoma is that the people who live here have a really special love for it. And it is, it's not a big city trendy like Seattle has become. It's kind of reminds me of how Seattle was, 20 years ago. And the other thing, it's a small town. The buildings downtown, there's incredible historic architecture here that you don't get to see as much anymore in Seattle, since they've got all these enormous skyscrapers or whatever. So the vibe of the place is actually really lovely. And I was aware for myself that when I first moved here, I had almost it was like a reluctant enjoyment of being here. Because, and the reluctance was well, that's not what I expected. I wanted to be in whatever I wanted to be. And it's like being in the right place at the right time. So we also just moved to a little neighborhood within Tacoma called Fircrest, which is like stepping into a time warp, and all the houses are mid-century modern. And that is not my expectation is, I wanted to be in a historic house, which for the Pacific Northwest was the one we were in. Was 1905. So we're in a historic house, but it was built in 1956. And I am finding that same kind of weird, appreciation of it's like being in the right place at the right time. And it's coming from a place beyond what my mind expected, or actually what we thought we were intending. So it's opening up to a bigger result than we thought.
Well, I love how you put that awareness of, the right time and place. What did you say? It just went. What the term you were using? That you're in the right. You're in the right time and place. And for me, every moment is the right time and place.
Yes.
Because in awareness, in the unfolding of really noticing how I am in my life, that's where I am. That's where I am. It's not where I'm supposed to be. It's not any kind of conditions that we might put on that. That's just where I find myself, and let go of the judgments about it and go, okay, this is where I am. And I appreciate that. There's so much more flexibility, fluidity, less resistance, less rigidness in going, oh, I didn't plan to be here. What's here? What did I allow myself? Because I think it goes back to our core setups, Joan, and our core rule sets, guidelines that we establish as what reality is for each of us. And mine is pretty much that whatever I experience enriches my life. And in being that means I can have any kind of different experience, and I know it's empowering to me in some way. And it's in its place, it allows me to enjoy the negative, the positive, the mediocre, the spectrum, the whatever condition-wise label I want to put on it. And so it's like, okay, that was really painful, and I didn't expect that. And it's like, okay, and then there's another moment, and then I can go to the next moment, and then at some point a week later I can go, wow, that was totally unexpected. And no, I didn't have any idea, because if I had known, I never would have done it. And I think that's pretty much it. If you knew what you got yourself into, you wouldn't do half the things. I mean, if I had it explained to me exactly what could happen, and that's the key, because they can explain exactly what will happen, and it's not, and that's the setup. So you have to go, if they had explained it in terms of, well, this could happen, and then you can go, oh yeah, that doesn't fit in with my picture. And then, but when someone tells you this will be the result, then you're kind of stuck. You have to, you can feel your body just kind of, I'm stuck here. I got to have this. So not knowing anything sometimes is really a much better place to be.
That reminds me when I used to do psychic readings, and I developed this technique for foretelling the future. And, people would come to me and ask, for a future question. And oftentimes I would put the timeline out, and I would see that person's future self telling me what was going on. So the future self was communicating to the now and saying, da-da-da-da-da. But sometimes you would see nothing. It would be like this fog or this cloud. And what I realized is like, oh, well, you're not supposed to know where you're going to end up, because, you would try to shortcut it. You're supposed to be going through whatever muck and fog you're in the moment to get you to that clarity. Right. And kind of like what you're saying is that there's no good or bad to being in the muck or fog either. There is, not at all. It's all part of the experience.
Hey, I'm enjoying reading my romance books.
Well, one of the things I had looked at in being in unexpected places was, I was in Washington, D.C. unexpectedly for 2 years. I thought I was going for like a couple months, and the next thing I know, it's like 2 very hard, very painful years. Yeah. And there was a similarity of appreciating where I was in the moment, even though the circumstances were insane and incredibly painful. It was like, oh, this was an interesting place to be. And the being in the moment of it was not as bad as I expected. So I had the same kind of reluctant enjoyment of being in Washington, D.C. during a time that I could have been in resistance and hating everything, which would have just made it all harder. So,
that's a challenge for, I hesitate, maybe, I don't know, intelligent people, or people who can question, is that we want to judge everything, right? And we want to validate our pain, because that's an important thing. Well, I got to make this worthwhile if I'm going to be in this. And there's a challenge to that. Because, no, you don't. What if I said you don't have to validate your pain? What happens when you do that? And you go, oh, maybe I can relate to it differently. Maybe it has the potential to take me someplace else. And I think the problem is, sometimes with people who view them, get labeled nice, is that we kind of try and negate our experiences and our real passions and our vitality, and everything gets qualified, quantified, and subjective and subversive, and then it's buried, and then it's running its own agendas underneath, and then that's where those expectations come into play, and everything gets under the surface. So we need different things to bring us to the awareness of really what's unresolved, or what your truth is on that level, and where you're holding information. I mean, and we do this because we're questioning curious people. We have the ability to look at our circumstances and not be them, and we use them, and that's the delight of being human and alive and being consciousness in a human form, I think.
Well, that's the fun of being consciousness in form. Mm-hmm. And the thing I realize when I'm navigating as consciousness, there's this tremendous appreciation of everything that's going on. And there's kind of a lack of desire to change, fix, or manipulate anything around you, or to make stuff happen, because you're aware that you're creating it as consciousness all the time, moment to moment, down to the smallest detail. So there isn't any need to change the storyline, because you're creating the storyline outside of your mind with it.
Right. I think what comes into play is that people, we're very quick to say, okay, here's this, here's the reaction, here's the result. And what we forget is that you do something, and then your worst fears or things that you thought but didn't really make a difference come into play. And so in being creative, that helps you to appreciate all the myriad of information that's gathered in any one place about something. That's about the spectrum of, and things come into play. For instance, in what you were saying there about what shows up. You know, sometimes we're surprised by what shows up. And sometimes we're like surprised and then, oh yeah, I would have expected that. Bingo. That's it. And that's the one you want to notice, because there's your limit, there's your set point. And you go, oh, all right, let me play with that. And it's not in a place of trying to control or fix or manipulate or judgment about oneself. It's just about looking at it from that neutral place and going, oh, that's something I can play with. And I think that's really, really important here, is about we're not assigning blame. We're not judging anything. We're taking things back to the sheer energetic presence of it and orchestrating the potential back into it. And that's the playground that we're in. That's the state of awareness we're in with stuff.
You know, I was thinking, as you were talking, I was realizing our innate impulse is to create, because as consciousness, we are creators. And you just look around and we're trying to replicate our creativity as consciousness. So for instance, you know, some people, they really love to do things like model trains or fish tanks or any of those sort of things. And it's replicating it's replicating creativity at the level of consciousness creating the world in form. So we love that. And then you look at technology, and it's always trying to replicate our abilities as consciousness. So we're trying to, recreate the ability to communicate over long distances, which you can just do telepathically, and for the ability to fly or any of those things. Is that we're constantly on the quest to replicate our abilities as consciousness. And I think where we get stuck is when we get into competition really with our higher selves. You know, when so that little Napoleon of us comes out is really when we're in competition as opposed to in alignment. So I think I'm circling back around to that term alignment that you used. It's like being, when you know that you're consciousness and when you are operating as consciousness, there is this alignment, this agreement, or everything just falls into place and starts to reorganize into a more perfect way.
Well, you know, and it's dealing with the unexpected often is about dealing with the expected, right? It's the unexpected comes from what we expect out of that. And for instance, my husband doesn't tolerate the holiday Christmas even well at all. And if his family is listening, they may not know that about their brother, but he just doesn't. So he starts girding up around Thanksgiving. He starts tightening up. And for me, I don't come out of a Christian tradition, so Christmas, okay, that's fine. I can just pick and choose at what I want because I'm not attached to anything in the story. But he has his story about all those dynamics. And so it's like, well, sweetie, why don't you just be more like me about this? And everything he comes up with, he's got to do. I just go, well, what if we didn't have to? And, you know, and first of all, it just kind of goes by him, right? What do you mean we don't? Yeah, well, that just doesn't compute. So he goes on and he's unhappy. And I'm just like, well, what if we don't have to? Why don't you just lay around and read romance books for 3 weeks like I've been doing, sweetie? You might, you know, and it's like, well, I can't do that. And, you know, you just really, what is important? We put the importance on anything. And we set up the expectations. And he expects to have a difficult time in the holiday because that's the way it always is. Not realizing that if he could change his setup and perhaps be more like me in that and find the little moments, all those little moments are going to start to add up so that maybe next year when this time comes around, he'll go into that pose, but then he'll also go, well, yeah, all right, but we can have a good time too. So, you know, you just never know where you are with information and our attachment to it and our justification of it and our validation that it has to be that. So that's in that expectation and intention come into play.
You know, it is interesting because Hanukkah is not as big a deal as Christmas is.
No.
And it's probably gotten more and more commercial over time with the kind of gifts and things. And I'm in this delightful in-between space where my children are adults now. They're male and they're adults. But we don't have grandchildren yet. So I don't really have to do, and my husband's Buddhist, so I don't really have to do any Christmas. And it's funny because we're in this house, and I suddenly realized we're the only house in the block that doesn't have any Christmas decorations. And I suspect that the family that lived here and owned it for many years just really went to town, because someone made a comment how we hadn't done anything for Halloween either, and it's like, no, we barely had anything to put out. Oh yeah, we should buy a bag of candy. So we're in this really blissful spot where the only thing I've got for Christmas right now is a poinsettia. You know, I don't have to pull out all the Christmas ornaments or the stockings or anything. So I'm really enjoying that spaciousness of not being in the frenziedness. And if I'm really pressed, I could say I do miss the fun part where, you know, my kid used to wear his cowboy boots and his Santa hat for months at a time, and we'd do the Christmas carols at the movie theater, and he'd run up and down the aisles. He's now 26, and he would never do that now. So can't get him into cowboy boots.
Well, I think that's what the holidays, that flavor comes out, is because there's so much to do anymore. And what the holidays represent and what traditions and the energy it takes to maintain traditions and even traditions that don't serve anyone. It's just the way we always do it kind of thing. And your people are straddling how to merge, how to integrate, how to relax about setting their own tone, and how sometimes that has to come across as defiance to the rest of to somebody else.
So Janet, so you're starting, you are launching into a whole new topic, but I will have to say that we have a lovely tradition here, and that's going to a commercial break about this time in the show. So we have to stop for a commercial break, but stay tuned because we're talking about consciousness and dealing with the unexpected when we come right back.
Would you like a fresh approach to the challenges you are dealing with? Take a journey into your enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Janet is a subtle energies empath, accessing the field of potential with warmth, humor, and support. She will help you to hear what your inner voice is saying. She will share with you how to appreciate who you are now and offer you new ways to understand and transform your issues. Reach her at www.janetandbeyond.com. That's janetandbeyond.com. Again, janetandbeyond.com. Transformation is possible. You can enjoy new outcomes in your current experiences. They can happen in the blink of an eye. Is your soul calling you to do something more meaningful with your life? Do you feel crazy for wanting to quit your secure job? Perhaps you are waiting until you retire to do what you love. Maybe you are too daunted to follow your dream. If any of these match your life, then Joan Newcomb's Purpose and Passion Coaching Program is just for you. In just 12 weeks, you will discover who you essentially are and why you are here. Learn to live as your greater self and navigate with conscious mastery. Go to joan-newcomb.com. That's joan-newcomb.com for all of her coaching programs.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. To reach our program, please send questions and comments to consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. That's consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet.
Welcome back. You're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan, along here with Janet, and we are talking about consciousness and dealing with the unexpected.
There's lots of that going on. The unexpected.
Yes.
We were talking, I was talking in regards to holidays. So how people can just make it, just go heart-centered awareness, field of unified consciousness, be present, and then make your choices from that place. You don't have to do anything. And that's the key, is because if you feel you do have to do something, you just really want to check in with that and see what's anchoring that, and if that's still valuable.
For me, it's a very subtle shift of awareness. So we don't need to drop down, we don't need to drop up. We just are shift from side to side.
Just a shift of awareness. That's all.
Exactly. It's very subtle. So I do have to say that you do write about it, and I write about it. And I also have videos about it. So if you want to find out more about the stuff we're talking about, I do invite you to go to our website, consciousconversationswithjoanandjanet.com, because you can find more about techniques and ways to do things from the valuable information that we have on that site.
Yeah. We want everyone to enjoy themselves if they want to enjoy themselves. Now, a lot of people have it set up to not enjoy themselves.
No, we want people to be miserable if they want to be miserable.
More power to you.
You're not happy unless you're miserable. Okay.
Yeah, really. I'm not going to judge you about it. I'm just going to say, wow, that's an act of creativity. It's all an act of creativity. So, it's like, and that is really coming from a very labored place. That was hard earned in the past. To be in this place right now that says, okay, why don't I just relax? that comes after a lot of stress and turmoil and pain and all that. And this is my reward if I were to think in terms of giving all of that a value. Okay. Which is the setup. So if I remove that setup and just say, well, that was a lot of pain and angry and angst, and I find myself now happy that I'm like this, then there you go. I don't need that story to validate me and enjoying being where I am. So how you got it all set up.
And you can be flexible and change in the moment.
And you do consciousness techniques. That's what Joan and I have had a lot of training about, and a lot of people. That's, opening up your awareness of how you are limited and how to be unlimited. You'll always be limited. It's just how big your box is. How big do you want to play? And so that's what we invite you to do, is consider that you can take down that fourth wall and enjoy the audience more. So.
Yes, and if you're interested in consciousness techniques, you can witness them in person with Janet if you're in Portland on Tuesday nights or Thursday afternoons. She has a meetup group that she hosts in her lovely home, and she can just lie on the couch and wave her hands and you'll fall over, and that's a consciousness technique.
Yeah, it seems to be happening in the last couple of weeks. It's like, okay, I can't be upright, so cart me out there. So yeah, and people are having fun. It's just fun. You just go there. So. And
my meetups are different because Janet and I are opposites in many things, but this is what makes this show so wonderful.
And public libraries, it's pretty challenging to flop on the floor.
Right.
So,
yes, I'd have to have insurance forms and things like that. So we meet and gather and have conversations. We're on a bit of a hiatus at this time because I have been working on this new product, which is called Do It Yourself Total Transformation. It's going to be launching on January 1st. I will be putting out a lot more information about it as the month goes on, but it is for all of you there who live around the world and can't make it to one of our meetups, and you can just do it on your own pace, go at your own pace and in your own way, and it's trainings in specific consciousness techniques. And then there are add-ons if you want to connect with a group. I do have group add-ons, and I can also work with you privately on that, but the main body of the focus is on specific consciousness techniques because, we need upgraded techniques in this world. We are no longer dealing with dial-up we're in Wi-Fi land. So things may seem ungrounded, but that's because we're just operating wirelessly.
Yeah, and techniques and skills and tools, all that kind of fit into a place of how to best present yourself in the world as yourself, right? And you put all this together and you go, okay, what do I want to do in my life, and where am I with that? And some people have to keep their head to the grindstone, I guess, their nose to the grindstone, and they're very focused in other areas and ways, and we don't judge that. So but what you do want to notice, if you can, is that life is full of all kinds of moments.
And speaking of moments, I was waiting for you to get to a point, but I'm nose to the grindstone in terms of time and space. So I'll just remind people that our website is consciousconversationswithjoanandjanet.com. You can go there to listen to all our old podcasts. You can binge listen to them there. You can also go there to read our blogs. Janet puts out a lovely blog on Mondays, and I put one out on Fridays. So you can read about this stuff. You can also learn about our meetups, where to go and see us in person in Seattle, Tacoma area, or in Portland. And then also you can learn about our sessions, because we work with people in person and through Skype, Zoom, or on the phone. And then you can find out more about us on Facebook. Go to find the group Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet on Facebook, or Joan Newcomb or Janet Barrett. And then you can also find links on our website to find us on Twitter and for the YouTube channel and me on the YouTube channel.
Sounds good.
Does sound good. And I think we are sliding into home. So,
well, we are we? It's a long, slow slide, it looks like.
It's a long, slow slide because there was some interesting, Mercury's retrograde and there's all sorts of communications going on. But we do want to thank people for listening and there is no time or space as consciousness, so it doesn't matter when you are listening to this. You are helping to be a part of this morphic field and help energetically create the show in this moment. So we really appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you so very much for joining us, everyone, and we wish you the best of all that we can each be, and it's okay where we find ourselves because that's the best where we are in that moment. So life is about being present and in your moments and how you doing, and love yourself no matter that moment and how you are in it.
You've been listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan, along here with Janet. And stay tuned for next time, same channels.
Thanks,
You've been listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. And thanks so much for helping to co-create the show, no matter if you're listening live or on demand. You energetically contribute to our collective experience. Joan and Janet love to hear from you and invite you to email your comments and ideas for them to explore each week. Contact them at consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Tune in next week for another great show, and until then, keep enjoying this wonderful adventure we call life.